Hello, guys. Welcome back to the Sports Dial. It's so great to be back once again, shooting videos as we always used to do. This time we are back with a bang. We have Mr. Hugh Edmeades, world-renowned auctioneer, someone who's done over 2,500 auctions and raised over 3 billion amount through his auctions, and also in this part of the world is very well renowned for his time with the IPL. Uh, Mr. Edmeades, thank you so much, firstly, for joining. And before I could get into anything, I think the entire India wants to know. We hope you're doing really well.
Yeah, no, I'm fine, thank you. One or two aches and pains from where I landed rather heavily last Saturday.
Yeah.
But they will recover. So no, I'm great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. So again, you've been a part of the IPL auctions for a while now, and it's been great watching you on the screen. But how was it when you got to know for the first time about the IPL auction, and what was your initial feeling when you heard about all this?
Well, I was contacted right at the very beginning, all those years ago.
Oh,
The international management group was sort of supervising the IPL auctions
yeah,
for the BCCI, and I was approached by IMG saying would I be interested, and I thought the concept was revolutionary and very interesting. My trouble was that I was working full time with Christie's, and
yeah,
my commitments to them just didn't allow me the time to come over to India to take that first auction. So reluctantly, I had to turn it down, and regretted that decision ever since. And then in 2018, IMG came back to me and saying, we're going to have a change of auctioneer. Would you like to stand in? So it was a no-brainer. I immediately said, yes, please. And that was
indeed. And it's been a pleasure watching you since then. I'm sorry.
No, it's been a pleasure for me to come out to, well, Jaipur was the first city then,
Yeah,
Calcutta. Chennai wasn't that much fun because of the COVID restrictions, and I had to
yeah,
just my hotel room. So I never got to see any of the city. And the same with Bangalore. I had to obviously quarantine for the required amount of time. And then I had to fly back straight after the auction. So I had no
yeah.
chance to tour the city.
We can understand about that. So talking about the latest one, obviously it wasn't. It did not start off on a great note for all of us watching. Whatever happened was a little unfortunate. But again, Mr. Charu Sharma, he stepped in at the right time. And did you get a chance to go through what he was doing, and what did you make of his performance as an auctioneer?
Well, I thought it was amazing. I mean, my main concern was, when I came around after my fainting,
Yeah,
was who was going to be able to continue with the auction. So I was delighted to hear that Charu had been contacted. The poor chap was sitting at home having his lunch and was told to get round to the hotel as quickly as possible, and to take the mega auction. No, I mean, the IPL is different to most auctions,
yes,
and the fact that he was able to step in with absolutely no notice at all, he had been able to do no preparation. I wouldn't have fancied stepping into his shoes at that stage, I must admit. So I take my hat off to him, and I shall be always grateful for him sort of being available and doing what I thought, because I watched it from my room, doing a fantastic job under very strange circumstances.
indeed, this was strange circumstances, but also for all those watching, I think people started raising plenty of questions, in terms of how an auction functions, and people started having many more new doubts as far as how an auction, happens. So, as someone who's been a part of the IPL auction for so long, uh, what are the major things that is sort of trending, at least when it comes to discussions about an IPL auction? How long is too long before you close a bid? That's something everyone wants to know right now.
It's just a a matter of judgment. I was very aware that obviously this year, with the COVID restrictions, that not all the franchise interested parties were going to be able to attend the auction. So I knew that the franchises would be on the telephone to owners, to accountants, or whatever. So I'd already said at the auction meeting the night before that I was going to give people extra time to discuss over the telephone. One judges from body language to a certain extent. The only trouble with body language at the IPL is that although there's only one bidder allowed per franchise, there are 7 or 8 other people around the table, all on their laptops, all with their spreadsheets, all discussing the permutations. What happens if we don't get this player? Who are we going to go for next? How much are we going to spend on him? And we set a target for this particular player. Now the bidding is going over that. Do we continue? So I have to allow. I mean, normally it's I have 2 bidders to worry about. And they have to make up their own minds. Whereas the IPL, you've got 6 or 7 people trying to make up their minds. So yes, I do allow extra time. I do ask them to make it clear when they really are out of the bidding, so I don't waste my time looking at them, and I can go around looking at the other tables. But it's a difficult one. It's important that I play fair. That if I give them one franchise extra time, then and they finally bid, I'll then go back to the underbidder and say, right, I'll give you as much time. I've got to make it a level playing field, that everyone feels that they've got the equal opportunity. But at the end of the day, the auctioneer, is in charge of proceedings. And if you give the franchises too much time, they'll take it. You know, I threaten them with my gavel. I'll hold my gavel up and say, I'm going to sell, last chance, and then perhaps count 1, 2, 3. Are you sure? I'll then swing my head around the room again just to make sure I haven't missed anyone else trying to come in at the late stage. And I thought, are you done? Going, bang, gone. No one has complained to me about, to my face anyway, whether I'm giving people too much time or not. But even if they do, I would say to them, look, it's my party. I'm in charge. I will give as much time as I think fit, without letting the franchises, you know, take the mickey out of me.
Absolutely. And you know, talking about IPL auctions, these are at least what we make of it. It's very different to the auctions that you usually conduct. Is it so?
Totally different. Basically, it's when I'm working for Christie's or whoever else I'm selling for. The more money I raise, the more commission my boss makes. So that, you know, we're acting on commission at that stage, whereas the IPL, the BCCI don't benefit financially from my skill. The only people that benefit are the players. So it's in the players' interest that I get as much money rather than in my employer's interest. And the other difference is that in my day job, I'll have telephone bids coming in, I'll have online bids coming in. People who can't attend the auction might ask me to bid up to a certain level on their behalf. Whereas in the IPL, up to this year, I've only had to worry about 8 people. Obviously, this year with the 2 new franchises, I've only got to look at 10 people. So from that point of view, it's quite straightforward. I haven't got to worry about people jumping in on the telephone or bids coming in via a computer screen. So it's a fascinating sort of subtle change.
Yeah. Also, sir, is there any specific preparation you do for an IPL auction, like some sort of a mock before the main event or anything like that?
No, I mean, I suppose my main concern is not saying pounds or dollars.
Yeah,
And with the rupees, the lakhs and the crores,
yeah,
so I stick to lakhs. You
yeah,
just have to keep remembering when I say we're at 200, it's 200 lakhs, not
yeah,
200 pounds. So I'll
yeah,
run. The increments are slightly different. They are kind of preset. 20 to 100 as in fives, 100 to 200s in tens,
yeah,
and then we go in 20s up to 500, then in 25s, which is slightly different, because normally over 500 I'll be going in 50s.
yeah,
So that's another thing I've got to concentrate on, remembering so what the next increment is, because the buyers or bidders have got to be confident that when they put their hand up, I'm going to call the number that they think I'm going to call. Because if they're not confident that I don't know what I'm doing, they'll be less keen to bid.
absolutely. Sir, as an auctioneer, especially during an IPL auction, when it also like there are plenty of people watching, and there's uh, more than just one stakeholder. That you also have to keep the viewers entertained. So, is it something that you keep in mind that you want to keep the entire procession of the auctioneering a little more interesting? Do you do anything like maybe use facets like humor or anything like that? Is it something you concentrate on?
Yeah, yes. I mean, I try to smile even when things aren't going well.
Yeah,
There are obviously extended periods of silence while the sort
yeah,
of while the franchise are discussing how much
yeah,
further to bid or whatever. So I try to fill in those silences by perhaps suggesting, are there any other franchises wanting to come into the bidding?
yeah,
It's a serious business, auctioneering. Some auctions can be very dry, so I try to. I'm conscious that I'm working for the franchises, for the players, for the BCCI, and also for the millions who are watching, the live proceedings on television. But ultimately, my main concern is to keep the franchises engaged,
yeah,
because if I get very boring and lose their interest, they'll
yeah.
soon lose their interest in me.
Absolutely. So it's been a while now since you've taken up IPL auctions as well, upon many other things that you do. Uh, thus far, have you had any very memorable? Uh, has there been any bid, any player bid that remains very memorable to you?
Well, apart from Mr. Hasaranga last week, um, I enjoyed selling Varun Chakravarti a couple of years ago when
Yeah,
the bidding started. I think it started at 20. I think his base price was 20.
yeah,
And it went up and up and up and up and brought the hammer down at 840 lakhs, which
yeah,
uh, was fantastic. I mean, I don't know how well known Varun was at that stage, but obviously two of the franchises recognised his potential and
yeah,
were keen to secure his services. And then last year, obviously, Chris Morris, that was fun selling Chris. I mean, again, starting at a mere 75 lakhs and then ending up getting a record price of 1,625. That was fun because a couple of times the
yeah.
biddings stopped, slowed, and I thought I was going to sell him for 1,200, and then off it went again. And that's what I enjoy about the IPL is I don't have any expectations, so it's the unexpected which is keeps me keeps me focused. If I thought that, normally when if I'm selling an item of furniture, I know it's going to make £500, and it usually does seem sort of £400, £500, £600. But
Yeah.
when I sort of announce the player's number and his name, I have no idea whether there's going to be any bidding at all. My first two players I offered back in 2019 were Alex Hales and Martin Guptill. And I thought, well, this is good. They're good players. I'll get a flying start. And I received not a single bid for either of them.
Yeah.
This is going to be an interesting auction. So yeah, no, it's the fun of the unexpected.
Indeed, it's often quite surprising. Like even we as viewers, sometimes we have absolutely no clue who the franchises want and don't want. It's quite interesting, indeed. Yeah,
no, I say, and the franchises have a far more difficult job than I have. I mean, if they get outbid
indeed.
for a player they particularly want, they then got to sort of go back to their spreadsheets and say, right, who is a similar player to this we've missed out on? How much are we going to bid for him? So of course that slows the whole proceedings down when they're doing their deliberations. I'm just up there. I suppose I see myself as the umpire, making sure there's fair play, everyone has the same opportunity, and as I say, their job is far more difficult.
Indeed. So, sir, now that you've mentioned about the franchises and their strategies, do you think like there are a lot of fans who come up with like very sometimes stupid, sometimes very naive theories that the teams, some of the people at the table that's trying to just raise the paddle and just hike the price for the opposite team? Do you think such practices actually happen?
I'm sure it does happen from time to time.
Yeah,
it's a very dangerous practice because if they're trying to push the price up for a certain player against another franchise, and then that franchise stops bidding, the franchise pushing the bidding up will end up with that player, which they might not have wanted him. So there are all sorts of scenarios which I'm sure all the franchises practice
indeed
in their meetings before the auction. Lots of what if scenarios. What if we go for him and don't get him? And what if that franchise goes to that player and we don't want them to have him? Let's push the price up. I say it's a very dangerous practice, and I can't believe that it happens that often. But you have to ask the franchises about that.
Yeah, definitely. So now that you've been apart for a while, have you ever had any interesting conversations, or did any of the players ever come up to you or thank you, or has any such anecdote ever happened to you?
No. The only two players I've met were Johnny Bairstow and Mark Wood.
Okay.
That was last year when a certain airline decided to cancel my direct flight from London to Chennai. And so I was flown into Bangalore.
Okay.
And then the Indian Cricket Board and the English Cricket Board managed to get me onto the bus that was bringing some of the English replacement over for the Test series against India. And so I travelled from Bangalore to Chennai on a bus with Mr. Bairstow and Mr. Wood. And it's funny because Mr. Wood Bairstow wasn't in last year's auction because he had been retained. So I knew I wasn't going to auction him. But Mark was getting pretty excited. And the night before, I heard he'd withdrawn himself. So that was a bit of a surprise. But no, I haven't met any of the other players. One day I will, I hope.
Yeah, hopefully. So, firstly, again, I know we asked for your presence in such short notice, but thank you so much for agreeing to do this. It's been a pleasure watching you over the years, and thank you so much for joining. If you have anything to say to the Indian fan system, message, because I think everyone has been eager to hear from you.
Well, I'm just so grateful for the thousands of good wishes and best wishes, and I was very touched, especially when I sort of came back into to do the last part of the acceleration auction. to get a standing ovation.
Yeah.
I've never had a standing ovation before. Perhaps I ought to fall off the stage more often. But no, I'm touched. I mean, people who have signed up to my Instagram account.
Yeah.
I know that they've been onto my website. I've had hundreds of requests for LinkedIn, and it's very gratifying personally to know that I'm seen to be deeply loved in India, and I just hope I'll be able to sort of come back and say hello to everybody this time next year.
Yes, sir. So if you're part of the IPL, you are part of the very much part of the Indian cricketing family, and it has been a pleasure watching you over the years. And I must say, all that adulation is totally worthwhile. Again, thank you so much for joining. Hopefully, we can have a conversation once again in the future. But until then, thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for having this chat with me. I've thoroughly enjoyed seeing you, and I wish we'd been under different circumstances that I could have done the whole of the auction. But such is life. But
Indeed,
thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
All the best.